Hello, Mrs. Akana. Season's greetings. I hope that you're doing well out there. I hope that today finds you in excellent health and spirits. It's been a very productive season. It's been a productive couple of seasons, but right now is really where I'm feeling everything coming together. And throughout the last couple of years, I've been working on all kinds of different things and waiting to get a solid enough direction in momentum in one direction that I could start to present my work. And it was kind of, sporadic, taken here and there and the other thing. And I've finally built up enough of a momentum of communication behind the work that I'm doing and enough bridges to tie the work together into everything that I want to create and produce together with everyone I'd like to work with. That I'm becoming quite confident and taking that confidence into excitement and just the drive to create, to dream, to get inspired and to inspire in turn, right? To be able to galvanize and motivate potential while using the potential of others to inspire your own, and just building a productive and positive momentum around creation in all ways, shapes, and forms. And as always, it gets me inspired to learn, inspired to read, inspired to write, inspired to get into the behind the scenes behind like all of my favorite projects, and like learning who are these people, what are the ways that they think that are similar, what are the ways that they think that are different to each other and unique, what fits into different skill sets and personality types, and how do they work well together to create something beyond what any of them could have ever done alone, right? Like the perfect Dungeons and Dragons team, the perfect synergy of different classes and elements and abilities coming together to create, this super team, right? That Baldur's Gate alliance of power and energy that makes magic happen, that makes spontaneous magic happen, that creates more than we ever could on our own. So yeah, getting excited, even like stepping out of my comfort zone into places where it's like, okay, let's just see what happens, and not having to have everything hammered down before you start, to be able to take that leap of faith, right? So I've been sending lots of stuff to the Kojima team, and just like I have enough confidence in the work that I'm doing and the vision behind the work, those dreams that I see in my heart and mind, that I can start to present it to other artists who I admire, who I look up to, who inspire me, and I start thinking about the projects that I'm working on with also their skill sets, their imagination, their unique imagination and intelligence, and what they might bring to it, and getting that excited feeling of not knowing what it would be. And like, I wonder, to wonder and to dream in that space has been just like multiplying my excitement again. And if I'm already thinking like, oh man, I can't wait to work on these things, that is just super, super cool. So I'm trying to find a way to get started. Like I have gotten started already in a lot of ways, but I'm trying to find like what is the next best step forward, and not to like, you know, put any like preset definitions on it. Like this has to happen, but to keep it in that space of positive expectation of ooh, what if? Like, ooh, this is good. This is exciting. Let's see where this goes. So you don't have to like put any unnecessary pressure or expectations on anything that you do, but to keep it in that light, fun, spontaneous place of inspiration. Something that I was thinking about tonight that just has a really positive energy behind it is like you should, if you want to, hire me and cynics to work on something for you. It could be almost anything. But if you have like enough of an inspiration behind what you want to see, even in a general framework, and enough open space that we could also like innovate on that framework and project and start doing interesting things with it, whether it's like a comic book series that could lead into something bigger, like a light series, a limited series, having something prove itself in effectiveness in comic book form, thematically, in terms of design and direction, the characters, the writing, the way they play off each other, everything is a fantastic way. God, Scavenger's Reign. Whew, Titmouse Studio again. Killing it, Titmouse. What up, Pantheon, Gentry Chow, Titmouse, 2020. Writers or animators union unionizing their animation studio, taking on larger, more ambitious projects, still coming back to the roots of stuff like the Venture Bros and Metalocalypse movies. Hell yeah. Titmouse up on it. Blue Eyes Samurai, my god, holy shit, Blue Eyes is just crazy. And to get a nerd out on Blue Eyes, and have bring me back to all these things that I love and I've fallen in love with over time, you know, old samurai movies, Kill Bill, like just taking on a new project from a relatively, like, you know, they're veteran storytellers, but behind the scenes on Blue Eyes is also crisp. Avatar: The Last Airbender, an example of like one of those things where you're like, new stories should be great and cool. You're like, there are so many stories in the world, but if you look at something like Avatar and you're like, we would like more things like Avatar, and even if you get the 5 closest anime or something, and you're like, yeah, they're all kind of like anime, but the way that it bridged the style of kind of Eastern, I can't even talk about Arcane right now, it's at the top. Eastern storytelling and holistic storytelling and epic mythology with Western comedy. Even like the guys that made Avatar worked on Family Guy beforehand and other Western animated and comedy like shows beforehand, but they wanted to break out of that mold and innovate on the genre. As far as one project to specifically do, those innovations are just massive. For Western animation and cartoon storytelling, Avatar was such a wild divergence and such an ambitious project, and came from the heart so much. You know, the behind the scenes on Avatar is stellar. Mob Psycho, it's not an anime to miss. It's never an anime to miss. Mob Psycho's got to be on the list. As far as wanting to watch my little brother and sister, and they were like just as into it, even more into it than I was at times. Yeah, no, live action Airbender, really cool. Right? I really like the kid who plays Aang, and watching this interviews and behind the scenes, like his heart seems like it's really in the right place. And that was something like if you're doing an interview show or just like some kind of creative content to inspire our actors, writers, designers, you know, storytellers, our collaborators out there. I'd love the chance to just talk to the kid for a minute because he's got to step into the role of the Avatar. And much like all the kids that played in Harry Potter and so many series, is like, you know, he's like, that's huge, but he's just like stepping up to bat and doing his best. And to see that for a character that is so cherished and treasured, and you know how much he's investing into it, and like to see him on the talk show is really fucking good. Dan to Dan's like my favorite cartoon right now, my favorite anime show. Favorite anime right now, Dan to Dan coming in, hitting just top marks, doing so many weird things. Oh yeah, you're not gonna mention BoJack? No, I'm sorry, you're getting on a Netflix tangent. I meant to put something on, but I was like, Netflix is cool because it's got such a diversity of storytelling and styles. And Netflix and chill has been something that's been getting me into my positivity just the last couple weeks. And something that's even been creating peace in the household, you know, things are up there. It's kind of like just find a positive momentum and to take that into everything that I want to create. So I can try and get solution oriented and to let the problems take up much less screen time than the solutions, even if you're looking at things that you want to change and ways that you want to make progressive changes, things that are worth fighting for, you know? When trying to write a better story for the future, you know, you don't want to get too bogged down into like analyzing the problems, you know? I love to say that math problems are not like real life problems when you're creating solutions. You know, the solution isn't to analyze the problem and to break it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces until eventually it will lead you to the solution. That's the answer to a math puzzle, you know, which is like when we're dealing with real world problems, it's much more like a storytelling problem with the open canvas, the blank page in front of you, and you can do and say literally anything in this infinitum of possibility in front of you. And then it's time to get creative. And the solution oftentimes doesn't have anything to even do with the problem. It's something else. It's another element that might not even be a part of your situation right now, you know? It's a new element that creates a new elemental reaction that could totally change everything up. And the more that you fill your mind and your space with the problems and analyzing them and breaking them down into smaller pieces in the past and what's happened in the past and those reactions, you're cutting into that infinite potential that's always in front of you. And when you can release and surrender and get intuitive, to do some meditation, to fill yourself with things that give you energy, inspiration, and life, you're on One Piece level. Yeah, the live action One Piece is amazing. I went and rewatched some of that just in the last week as well, and it's so good. Really, truly, the only anime adaptation that I've seen in live action that has anything on the source material or anything in standalone value, where it's not just trying to emulate this other thing, but all of their actors come into their own, add unique elements. The whole the global element of the One Piece anime is stellar. Rumiko Takahashi, let's go! Hell yeah! No, I haven't watched Inuyasha in a couple months, but when I did start watching Inuyasha a couple months ago, still totally held up. All the storytelling and stuff, the weird comedy, the action, the tension, the dynamism, the scenes, how they build it. Mwah, beautiful, my hero's still alive and well and in there, and to think of other kids, I'll have to tell you the whole story, but I was living in the town closest to this for a time with this family, and the kid there looked up to me like a hero while I was there. I'm still in contact with him sometimes, but he was equally inspired by the awesomeness of Inuyasha, and I was like, yo, some things are timeless and epic. Delicious in Dungeon is the best casual watch right now. Either Trigger Animation Studios, Trigger Animation coming in off that cyberpunk adaptation, absolutely stellar. 10 out of 10 marks, just impeccable. The cyberpunk adaptation was so good. And when I saw that Trigger was doing a lot of outsourcing of talent, stuff like doing the butterfly animation sequence in Steven Universe for the song with Steven and Connie, just a thought, it's just a thought. How did it harm you? Yeah, right? Yeah, no, super good. That was the Trigger animator, did all the butterfly stuff from that. Really, really good. And they did stuff like this Fire Emblem animation sequences. They did all of this different stuff with other studios. So they were one of the most mobile and prolific animation studios when they came out with Kill La Kill and actually developed the Trigger studio. And we're we can have animators that outsource and collaborate with a number of projects, Eastern, Western collaborations with video games, other shows. They were starting that wave in animation, which was one of the most exciting things for me at the time. And even now, to back cyberpunk, totally gritty, hardcore, pulp sci-fi, just blown, and going way above and beyond the specifications of the collaboration. It was do a fun cyberpunk thing, and they made a timeless epic. And they made those 10 episodes soar very few projects do. And then to turn around and do Delicious in Dungeon. I'm not sure if Delicious in Dungeon was done by a female mangaka. I kind of assumed that it was, because it has a very light, delicate, feminine touch to it. And I guess I heard a girl online saying that Delicious in Dungeon was the top on my half. It's so good. Studio Mappa bringing Takahashi back to life and the hearts and lives of millions right now. You can see how much of Inuyasha is in Ranma Half. He's a Chinese martial artist, right? He's going back to Japan. And he's got this kind of cute meat relationship with this girl who's now his fiance. And she's what? No! So they're always arguing and fighting, but at the same time they care about each other, and their relationship builds over time. They love each other. And he's always perched up on things with his Chinese martial arts skills, and he's walking across narrow fences and walkways and stuff. He looks so Inuyasha. And even some of the side characters come in. Ryoga is totally Koga from Inuyasha, and all these parallels is totally fun. But the Mappa animation is so goddamn good, and it brings out a lot of the spark in Takahashi's storytelling, where the romance is good. It's so cute. It's so fun. Mappa, also on Dorohedoro, they do so many awesome shows. I need to know that Mappa animators are getting paid better. there was a thing like 2 years ago, 1 year ago, where they were like, Mappa animators aren't being paid hardly anything. I was like, oh my god, man. When I saw Jujutsu Kaisen and I was like, they're bringing in 3 times the animation budget on this show, I'm sure that they're having 3 times as many animators, or they're being paid 3 times as much. And it's like, no, they just work 3 times as hard. Like, the budget of Jujutsu Kaisen is not like a huge amount bigger than any anime's budget. I need to get into the behind the scenes to figure out exactly how that's possible. Are these guys just being worked to the bone? We need to pay our animators more and to put together some kind of like larger unionization of animators, or at least of the animation appreciators out there, and a way to campaign crowdfunding and to network funds towards the best animators out there, and a celebration of all of the best animation, so that we can see more of it and have more people get into the field of animation, to give the animators out there more time to break and relax and regain energy, so that the work they do is even of a higher quality still. They have the chance to rest and relax, that I'm to get back on the grind with enough people behind them to support them, to give them that window and that pillow, you know? With more of the best tutorials and creative and educational resources in the field of animation, so that people can get started in their education before they necessarily go to school for it. They still have the professional schooling and the resources to start their educational journey wherever they're at, so that when they do get that hands-on, intensive, peer and mentor-based like education that you're really paying for, they'll be able to get a job quickly and get the most out of that time, and to move through it as quickly as possible. Like, I like the idea of educational systems and models where it's like, if you could get all of the skills to where you could just move to a job in half of the time, then you really don't need to be there for like 2 or 4 years or whatever. So you could streamline your colleges to have them moving through as many students as possible with as diverse of skill sets as possible. But anyway, I'm sorry, this isn't like the presentation that we're trying to make at all. Or maybe it is. This is a little bit more freeform. I guess it's just like when I start going, you know, I realize that I have a lot to say, but I also want to like take time so it's not quite as like, you know, like packed. I want to have a little bit of breathing space in here and a little bit of time to just like celebrate this time and space, this moment in time, to just have a little bit of present moment awareness, you know? Have a little bit of present moment awareness, and to be as spontaneous and intuitive as possible, but to create a positive, uplifting, life-giving space with this time that we have together, you know? You are healed. And I hold this space of your highest potential, your perfect health, perfect healing, that unconditional love and source energy that flows to you and through you, to hold that space, you know? I don't have a crystal in here, but I do have a Chiralium crystal, some pirates, and this guy. Oh, and my amethyst. Yeah, of course. We'll go with the Chiralium crystal and the amethyst with this guy on backup. Yeah, it's a really good day. Okay, I've got stuff to talk about. I've got like tickets lined up for a Joe Dispenza seminar in the not too distant future. When we've got that, how do I get that? By you know, like maybe potentially saving the life of one of our close family friends with hands-on energy work, and then after, you know, he's in a critical life-threatening situation, and me and my mom even, I was just like, we should really send him some Reiki. So we held like a Reiki circle, you know, and like really feeling it. He's a really good guy. Like, I don't want him to leave the world if he doesn't have to, you know. Everyone's got a journey and a time when I'm like hoping it's not him. So, you know, like I cry a little bit, but then just like take that energy into this space, into holding that space and moving that energy to and through him, and go through all the techniques that I've learned, which in my time I have learned a lot of different energy healing techniques and a lot of different schools of energy healing and metaphysics. I can't believe we didn't talk about this more. No, honestly, I was always like, I don't know if Anna like knows metaphysics at all or like likes metaphysics, if it'd be weird. Like I was like, she'd probably, draw the line at like energy healing, right? Because you're such a successful professional businesswoman, right? Out there in Hollywood, right, kicking ass. So I like didn't know. And then you come back with like a video on like manifestation and all of these things that have been such a big part of my life. And I was like, oh my God, let's go. And we'll have to do an in-depth like talk about metaphysics, about energy healing, about like some kind of intuition, psychic phenomena, shared energetic space, the laws of attraction, manifestation, stuff like when I watched The Secret back in the day, it was so huge for me as a kid. I was like 16 years old, 15, 16, and I got to watch The Secret, and it really changed the way that I thought. And even for like a week after that, I was just like, I'm only going to think about things that make me happy. And I'm going to be in control of my reaction to all things. So no matter what's happening around outside of me, I'm going to be in control of the reaction. I'm going to keep that control and I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose what makes me happy. And it was like the most enchanted week. Like after that, and then you fall back into the rhythms, the cycles, the patterns of behavior, the people around you reacting, and you can fall back into it, right? But for that time, I was like, that is huge. That is a superpower. And through so many things after that, like finding meditation, the work of Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, getting a very good like general sense of meditation, going to Taoist class, learning Taoist energy healing, and feeling like this magical sensation. And we can talk about all of that. My friend Natasha Chang brought me to her dad, Chuan Chang, and he gave me the like introduction into Taoism. But one thing that he could really do was push and pull energy like an electric current with his finger. And I'm like, Chuan Chang can do that? Like Maharishi desk jockey Chuan Chang? Come on. But anyway, yeah. What what are we talking about now? Well, this is just like my little message to tell you that I would love to work with you in some capacity. I'd love to work with you. If you have any kind of project in mind, think about hiring me and Cynics together. We have, I think, a diverse and complementary skill set. I'd love the opportunity to work with him. I've sent him some of the videos and presentations on the stuff I've been working on. I was like, he has fantastic contacts within the arts and design community. He's got fantastic contacts, but I think that he'd like to get his hands in the clay and mold and create something as well. And if we could do something that could light that fire in him, I'm sure that it could also spread to everyone that he teaches and knows personally and people that are within those circles, like anything, it doesn't have to happen, but it could. It doesn't have to be that right now, but it could be. And that's fun. That's exciting. I would love to make this like the best holiday season ever for myself and my loved ones. I'm really going to try and like hold that vision, that alignment, get the laws of attraction into it, and just like keep a sense of optimism, positive expectation. I know that it's out there. I know that it's coming. I don't have to like rush things. And when you don't rush things, then you can get into the perfect timing of things, which is usually the most time effective way to do anything, I think. Okay, so let me see. The Cynics thing is awesome. Cynics, Night Zhang is someone. I know Night Zhang has worked with Cynics at the college where he teaches at in California. Night Zhang was like one of his students. Night Zhang is like the most prodigal, badass artist designer ever. I don't know if she's like busy working on games and stuff. I think she's usually commissions and games and such. But if you give a designer or artist like enough money, they can usually fit you into their schedule somewhere. But that girl's got the hands of God. She's so goddamn skilled. Yeah, amazing. Night Zhang would be a fun person to work with, um, at times. Night Zhang would be fun, but I'd really love to do something with Cynics, and that was kind of like the idea that had the golden, glowing feeling tonight. Was like, you can get Hannah and Cynics on pretty much anything. While I build the studio space, while I'm working on larger projects and building frameworks for projects they could bring to other people that I think could really use those foundations, that scaffolding, to like bring their inspiration and talent into it, to elevate the project, to use the project in a reciprocal exchange of energy to elevate their energy, their state, as well. Which, when you have that heightened momentum, that's really good. I like to try and find ways to work on projects where it's like, even if it fell through, it would still be like a light victory, right? Even if you tried something interesting, ambitious, if you were investing yourself in something that you loved, if you were doing something exploratory where it's like you'll figure something out and the experience that you would get from the project would be worth the energy, that the project could be, or the ideas are so damn good that there's very little way that it wouldn't end up making above cost, right? For sure. Like working on a comic series, even a limited comic series with Cynics, we could do the boarding and the scripting, right? The boarding, the scripting, the dialogue, the designs for it, and then develop like an art style. Even if you have like another artist after that, if you wanted to make something quickly, right? Which is something that's really fun for me. Someone who's like has trouble like waiting for things, right? I'm like, I don't have it now. But the patience and the balance, and having like empty space as an equilibrium for the space, as that placeholder that I don't know, allows things to be in their form and shape. Empty space is just as much a part of design as the spaces. Same with life, it should be like breathing, like waves on the shore of energy with like, movement and stillness, and movement and stillness. Yeah, goddamn, Scavenger's Range was really, Scavenger's Rain, really good, really crisp. Oh. Um, yeah, I love things that Western animation can do as well. The last few years have been really good on animation. Even stuff like Blue Eyes, which is a fantastic Western Eastern combination of ideas. And which, when you see something like that, it makes me think like, the Western style, but done from the Eastern framework, is also cool. And all of these ways of using our tool skills and talents in ways we haven't seen before, that brings you back into why they are so awesome. Storytelling styles, different stories that we've seen a bunch of times, when you see it from a new angle and light. And as our culture, our language is in a constant state of evolution, whenever you create a new story, even if it's a very classic story, it's reflective of the times and the movement and that evolution. You can't really like tell the same story, because there's so many pieces to a story, especially a collaborative production, where it's like you're speaking to so many other artists and writers, and the sensibilities of all the actors, the designers, like everyone comes into it, So there's such a transference of intelligence and energy that I think a lot gets into stories that you don't even see, that you don't even plan for, because everyone's personality is in there somewhere. And when that collaborative vision comes through, it's like a unique moment in time. Uh, and I love that. I love that. And I'm always thinking about like projects and stories. It's something that I can't keep my mind off of, whenever I've got the coffee, or whenever I see a story that excites me in some way, I'll think, but what if it was taken from this angle? What if it was this period? What if there was a different art style completely, and it changed things, from a foundational level, and then all of the pieces of that story, at the surface level when it's finished would be different. Like if you change any of the foundational things, the mechanisms that create the story, the concept, the framework, the movement of the story, um, it'd change up everything. Like if you were like a different lead designer worked on Korra, and you take any number of these lead designers, and you're like, what if it was, you know, you could have all these different variations, and eventually, a story will snap into place and take that one size and shape that we see that it is immortalized into, and that's the coolest thing. But if you move backwards in time and you think, what if things had been different? That's something that I always like dreaming of, like completely alternate timelines, movies and games. I was like, most of the time, the biggest movements in history would probably be kind of the same, but our stories and games might very well be very different. Maybe everything would be different, but I don't know. If you're talking about like energetic magnetism or something, like some people have like a premonitive psychic energy or something, or like there's gonna be these big changes or something where there might be a lot of energetic magnetism at certain points in history. Some things might kind of, I don't know, have to happen. I don't think anything has to happen. But if there's like infinite timelines, then a lot of them kind of like are drawn to certain points, places, and events. But stories are often so spontaneous. They have so much synchronicity, so much this person being exactly that place at that time, and so much all of these other films that inspired and spoke to that person and became part of their creative voice. Or if those things had all been changed and that person was in just a little bit different place in time, or a different person had walked in, it all gets changed up. Like, what are the odds that we got the exact iconography for the Mario series, which became like the, you know, the icon of like creativity in video games? Where before that was all the action sci-fi games and sports games and what have you, but a game that was like a piece of moving art that was more than the sum of all of its parts. It really opened that up to a whole other level of creativity, and we see lots of stuff come through that gateway. But changing the shape of that gate, man, what are the odds? Where even if you had like a very local trans-dimensional portal where you couldn't go to like super distant timelines, just like relatively similar timelines, I think our media would always get shaken up. At least that's something that I've thought a lot throughout my life. No, this is really fun. No, let's see. I talked about Chrono Cypher like a little bit, right? Chrono Cypher, the side-scrolling girl and sword game. I think in one of the videos that I sent you, I mentioned it at least briefly, but then I've just like came back to it, especially as we're thinking of this like unlimited adventure. Terraria meets the movement and engine of Dead Cells a little bit, but then with a fresh art design and direction on top of that, where you could do stuff like Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy, and then you could like Asian style or something. So it does look signature and unique, but at the same time going back to all the foundational elements of gaming, and to make something that does create a very general framework so that everyone can have an adventure within this space. But within that framework of general adventure, to also have great specificity of design and direction, where you can have very fun characters, very fun tangents, like biomes that you wouldn't hardly see anywhere else, with the shells and the crystals and like the ruins, and like taking all kinds of aspects of like geography and nature, which is something in Terraria, right? But the geography and nature that's actually in Terraria is super, super general. But if you're like, what are the craziest crystals? What are the craziest types of trees? What are the craziest types of cliffs that we have on our planet? And then you look at what are some of the coolest fantasy series that have taken these natural elements and then bent them in fun ways, where you're not looking specifically at what is that fantasy series that's done that exact thing, but how did they change up a natural element, and in which way. So if you switch out both the natural element that you're changing and then maybe how you changed it as well, but you took the movement that they use, and Feng Zhu can explain this really, 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 really well. You know, Feng Zhu's art of design, he's got a very good general framework of design. He's worked on all kinds of AAA games and stories and movies, right? From the Star Wars prequels to like all kinds of stuff at like the highest level. Um, but Feng Zhu has a lot, but he doesn't have everything, obviously. But looking at how people do it, you know, how's it done in the design world, and like coming, you know, not copying other artists' design, but what are the foundational building blocks of design? And then you put different things into that design making engine, and you use your intelligence and creativity and design tools to come up with new ideas with that direction that you create. So, what's the element? How are you changing it? What is the change? You can put two things together in this way, but then you have a direction that grounds all of these ideas that you create and then puts them together, where you'll have designers come up with just thousands and thousands of ideas, and then you pick the hundreds of best ideas and put them in and you create the world. You know, so well, it's general in concept. I like the idea that you could also create a world that is very strikingly unique within there. I love stuff like fireflies, you know, shooting stars, like the reflection on water, moonlight, the idea of having like an active weather and like day night system with like light rays and effects. Um, so it'd look really, really great and create this timeless world of adventure, and especially a place where it's a peaceful space with a little bit of downtime, so you can rest there. There's not actually that many games where you can really just rest into them, but yet you can also pick it back up. So it's not just like an art game; it's very active, and there's a huge sense of progression, which I feel like is something that just gets you hyped for games. That's how so many mobile games have sold like billion-dollar profits on a super basic framework, because they made them to be super addictive and to have an element of progression. And I'm not saying that's an entirely bad thing. To have something that you're just like excited to have that like thing that you're gonna do and you're gonna make some kind of progress. And if that's something that people want, you want to have that space be something that can also give someone something back. You know, not just like a scripted dopamine release because you're seeing numbers going up on a screen that you've invested yourself into. Something back that's also fun, spontaneous, creative, challenging. Creative is huge, but imaginative. Something that brings you back into a sense of wonder, a sense of being a kid again. If you are a kid, a sense of going on adventures, you know, something that makes you happy to be alive while you're there, you know, something that gets you back into the world so that you can go through the challenges of life, but this time with a little bit more optimism, this time with a little bit more oomph in your step, right? So even just doing adventures for a few minutes, you know, the world is an amazingly beautiful, amazingly expansive, like world of infinite possibilities. And to have a game that says that back to you, then you're feeling creative. You're also feeling like you might get lucky, right? Because there's always like that lucky draw. You could get a miracle draw on an item or an event or a quest or a character. Like all of these things could have very rare RNG type elements that could come into the game at any point and with a frequency, because we'd have enough stuff in the game where rare things would happen to you specifically on your account more likely than like any other game. If you actually like match the idea in the production for the size and scope, I mean, like Terraria and Dead Cells are both made for like something like under $1 million each, right? And they haven't, well, Dead Cells had fantastic and stellar continued development support over time by the team. It's not like they've been working on it full time. They come back together to put in some months of development to like release a dope expansion, but it wasn't built for like continual expansion the way that you could if you had enough money to build a game that was really made to be like in a state of evolution as you go, where it was really like everything was built to have new items, events, characters, like biomes, whole other things like just locked right into it, right? and a lot of money to throw into production where you could have a stellar design team, where you could have a stellar development team and programmers, like writers and like a great management team, to have a lot of talent working on this thing and a broad enough vision to really hire a village to work on this thing, with enough money to like get all of the teams working together with a unified scope of the size and vision of this project. Then you really could make thousands upon thousands of different items for this thing. So it would give you that sense of luck in a way that, I mean, the vision is like greater than any other game out there to give you that sense of luck. And I like the idea that it'd be a game where you could buy things in the game if you wanted another skin or an emote or an item or something. That'd be great. But also maybe that the game does have like a low entry price so that you don't feel like the game is constantly trying to get you to buy things. Like it's selling stuff to you all the time, and you do have that space where you've like entered this world and you can just like escape into that world without it ever shoving new items in your face to buy. Right? Like there'd be like a home page that would tell you everything that's going on, and it'd be there if you want to invest in it at any time. But it's not like, sell, right? It could sell the world of the game and just the experience of playing the game as like a valuable thing that you could invest in, right? So super cool, right? That's something that I definitely like to work on, or like I'd like to see it made right by people that are like, going to do it right. But like everything that I try to make and everything that I envision, the reason that I try to make it or try to envision it is never like to make money, but to see something that I would like to see in the world, and to try and like crack it like a puzzle, to think, okay, if I want to see that thing in the world, how can I take steps? How would it be possible to make it happen? And if that's a cool idea, then what could you add on to it that makes it even cooler? And to use that to start doing homework, and to start free form visualizing and idea storming out there, to be like, okay, we've got an idea here. And just that creative momentum, coming up with new ideas, is like an energy current. And you can be like all tired or like sad or something, and then you get a new idea and you start to explore it. You start to chase that vision and that dream, and it like wakes you up. It energizes you, an energy current moves through you, and it moves into the work as you're doing it. You can like, I don't know, work at an elevated potential where you're writing stuff that seems like greater than the potential that you're on. You're channeling the genius of your project, so to speak, right? Channeling the genie through you. And that's like one of the best feelings ever. To feel like you're working on something that's elevated. Like it's not just you, but it's an energy current that's moving through you and into the project. Like the quality of the project is something that puts you at a higher level than you would normally ever be at. And that's something that I chase, of course, and it's something that I try to get into the work, where if it's a project that's really, really, really cool and you get people invested in it, like Luffy from One Piece, you get people into the crew, you're part of the crew, right? And being a part of the crew elevates them all beyond their natural abilities and gives them a unified synergy of purpose and motivation that, becomes like the core foundation of everything that they do in One Piece. And you really get that on a project, if you're invested in it, if you've got your heart and soul in it, and then every single member of the crew is working on that elevated level, like a crazy Grateful Dead concert, it's one soul movement as well as all the individual parts of it, everyone that's there, you're there on your own, but you're also there with the team. The energy of the team touches you and moves through you as well. So I have like a galvanizing mission statement. And of course, I feel like, of course, this doesn't have to, but I feel like it touches social development as well. If you're having ideas like the best education system in the whole world, what can we add to that? What can we develop on that? You know, things like the best blueprints for innovations. I'm sure you've watched Abstract, the Art of Design, right? The Netflix show, Abstract Art of Design. Whoo! You gotta watch Abstract Art of Design. And it's really, really good. But I think my favorite episode in the first season was the one with the architect. And they're all really good. But the one with the architect, you know? I'm not sure what his name is right now. Yeah, no. He's like from Europe, man. Um, and the first building that they made is like this like organic, like it's all wood planks, but they like warp and swoop into this skate park type area. And there's like a social center, right, for like kids. They can skate above it. They got a place to hang out inside of it. And they said that it was time effective, cost effective, and eco friendly. So I'm like, what? It's time effective, cost effective, and eco friendly. Why aren't all of our hangout club spaces as cool as this? And it's like the thing would be education, because they had like a genius architect team and all of them were on the same level so that they could coordinate and have all the different pieces and how they fit together and how they fit together on top of the framework. But it's like you wouldn't necessarily have to go through 8 years of architect school to be able to do that. If you're taking a crash course on top of already a general understanding and framework of construction, right? Like your town's local construction team, and then together, oh, they get their manly energy up to learn together. And they upgrade their architect skills by crash coursing and supporting each other, creating a peer and mentor based, you know, like rhythm to learn a specific piece of education that gives them all of the utility that they would need to make a really cool building. And if you did this and broke it down so it's like you get the knowledge that you need and the general knowledge that you need to be able to gain more knowledge, you could have the coolest towns and cities ever with all of the buildings, and especially designs for like shared spaces like social centers, like parks, like libraries. You know, you're thinking, how do we do them as effectively and cost effectively as possible? What are all of these different designs that have been laid out before us? You know, these architect school is such a crazy technical commitment, but when it comes to how much of that information is directly relative to the work that you'll end up doing in your architect's career, unless you're like a genius, brilliant designer like this European dude in Abstract Art of Design, like how much of it was necessary for the things that you're going to do, and to hone in on what those things are. And especially it's like if you had the ability to gain an architect like knowledge and general understanding and framework while you were getting a different degree, but there's no possible way you go to both colleges at the same time, but you could definitely like get a series of lectures and do the independent education on your own while you were in a different college course. I mean, I'm not saying it'd be easy, but I am saying it would be possible. Or if you have a different job and career there, you could also study a college degree for like literally anything. And it's like no utility is lost there, only utility is gained. You know, education is something that you can share and infinitely multiply for free. I feel like the world hasn't still caught up yet, even with all the ways that education is being shared for free. And we want to celebrate those while being visionary towards what can we create in the future, you know? Um, we don't want to like, oh, why aren't we doing it already? You know, you want to be like, we haven't caught it yet, but there are these ways where education has been shared amazingly, foundationally. Um, and to add on to that with all the utility of modern technology and communication, and we're thinking, how can we facilitate this world education in the most effective and cost effective ways possible, right? And to get the best minds on it, you know, to get them turning that puzzle box and seeing what we could uncover. Um, that's something that's just really, really exciting. I'm still like, like with everything we were doing in the world and how much money was given to people even during the pandemic. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. People needed that money to keep going. It was a difficult time, but it was like so much money. I'm not sure the direct figure, but it was like hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Um, And you're like, if you spent $1 billion on getting all of the world's best educational courses in everything, from the fundamentals like mathematics and sciences and literature and whatnot to like, architecture, arts and design and everything, the medicine, science, all of the major courses out there, like $1 million courses and everything, right? Like all of them. And then compiled together, and $1 billion website to host all of these courses and to have good moderation and forums so that you can have an aspect of like peer and mentor based education. Like, that'd be so much beyond what we have now. I'm like, and the utility that you'd get off of that in like a year with the amount of education that people would get, you'd be getting like hundreds of billions of dollars in education, right? Within like a year, it's such a good return. And you want to be like optimistic and like also like, why are we at where we're at? What has been the momentum of the past that's brought us here? Which the familiar past creates the predictable future, right? Joe Dispenza, oh my God. He's my man. And again, I do have tickets to this Joe Dispenza thing, and that's what got me back into like my entire unified framework and plan for this arts production company and the plan for the social development platform and ways that they can work together and bringing people into it. And like the idea of collaboration was like I've got these tickets to go to this thing. And I've been dealing with like a sense of self-worth, deep set sense of like a feeling of lack of self-worth, just like lack of abundance, lack of feeling worthy and deserving of good things with my entire life. It's like a very strong, hard set momentum that I've been trying to change. So even as I'm like, I want to do these things, I have full confidence in my work. It's hard to like get that on the intuitive level. And I've had these tickets for like quite a while now. This friend of the family was like, I will buy you tickets to go to this thing. When I told him everything that I'd learned about energy healing, all the different schools, the testimonies, the examples, personal experiences of witnessing amazing healings, everything that the people I know have told me, the things that I've seen and heard from the great masters, the testimonies that you see online, everything about intentional healing, people that have beat terminal diagnoses, instant spontaneous remission of a terminal disease, sometimes in a single night, people walking away from cancer, people with dissolved brain tumors, people, walking again after a paralysis that was going to be 100%. Medical science says there is a 0% chance of you ever moving again, yet they do, And medical science really needs to catch up with like not delivering those diagnoses when stuff like the Joe Dispenza Foundation has so many testimonies and scientifically, medically verified and documented cases of people using intentional healing to beat those diagnoses. So if they're like, well, okay, it does work consistently if you invest yourself in these techniques, but we don't know exactly why. And Joe Dispenza's got like books of science on why and how. And I'm like, dude, how can you not give him the entire backing of like the medical industry? And they're like, well, the medical industry is made to sustain the foundation of the medical industry. And it's like, the medical industry is made to help and heal people, right? For the highest quality of life possible, to serve the people of the nation who need help, right? And they're like, but we really profit off of all of that sickness. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You profit off of that wellness. You profit off of those people being within their power. Like, there are larger spheres of movement than within the medical industry. It's like, just because you're not getting their money, you're getting them in their power, you're getting them in their health, in their inspiration, like putting positive change and momentum into the world in their own unique way. It adds social infrastructure for the entirety of America, for the entirety of the world. The amount of cases of people within the medical industry not backing cures because they were profiting off of illnesses or cures that didn't really work is something that really gets my goat. I try to just like remain solution oriented, as you always must, if you go out there and you start just vilifying and like like they should pay, you won't get on as good of a tangent if you're like, but we have the ability to spread the right information and to create the right social links, you know? I'm not saying we let them all off the hook, you know? But maybe we should, because if you spent all of 100% of that vengeful energy on actually healing people, on actually creating wellness, on spreading the right information, on spreading the right momentum, that you can inspire people to heal themselves and the people around them. And the more you can cue into that belief, right? Like, the people that talk about placebo science was always something that kind of cracked me up, where it's like, they're like, it's crazy. If you trick the body into thinking that it's healing, the body doesn't even know that it didn't get a medicine. What? Like, if someone believes that they're being healed, it engages the most innately powerful healing system that is more powerful than most medications. Most medicines that we actually use are not as powerful as this innate healing system, and yet no one is using it without the placebo. And they seem to suggest in these studies and such that it's like that you need the placebo. It's like, apparently that's the only way to convince people that they have this healing system. But I've almost never, other than people within like the healing communities, heard it framed this way. I'm like, dude, what? It's like the body's so stupid, it doesn't even know that it's not getting the medicine. I'm like, dude, no. The body is so intelligent that if you can convince it it's healing, it activates that healing system. It is so powerful, you know? It is so powerful. And you can also do that for others, to hold that healing intention. Like, we are so connected. It goes beyond ourselves. Stuff like the Joe Dispenza Foundation. They're talking about like group healers, doing stuff like waking someone up from a 9-year coma, stuff like remission of cancer from someone remotely, people putting their energy together in these ways. Amazing. And I definitely want to be a part of it. Like, I think of like, going into some of the Mind Valley Foundation stuff. Like, I took the Jim Quick course. I didn't finish it, but I did like the whole first half of the course. Watch his presentations and his drive and the techniques and stuff. Like, everyone should be on that elevated level of learning. At least the belief, exercise, fun, active, state, teach. Always learn with those methodologies when you can. And to like Joe Dispenza, like, we should all have that healing system on all of the time. And the more that we can do that, together, the more powerful it will become. Both in our, individual healing, if it's just like something that you grow up into, like, as a fact, if you believe that you're healing and you hold an intentional focus on your body, you can activate and multiply the effect of any of the already miraculous and genius systems that make up the human body. You can add so much power to them. You have superpowers in that way. Kids are just like, wake up with it. They grow up with it. But also to learn at like a high level, and not to think of yourself like, you kind of need to pick one profession, an area of study or expertise. It's like, if you can get as much meta learning stuff as you want, as you can, ways to learn any skill as effectively as possible, and to translate new information and skills into your life and into your mind as effectively as possible, to translate information that you do not know into and relative to information that you do know. And then you get a new pattern, right? They say that most of the biggest innovators in any area of study do not come from the area that they make their innovations in. They come from a different area of study, and then they enter into something like a musician who goes into business, and they have the rhythm of music into business, or acting and arts and design, from acting to business to music to arts and design, from storytelling into like movies, any of these things. Like, most of the innovators do not come from the fields that they end up making innovations in, right? So we want to get as many people doing cross-class skills as possible, I think. And we want to cue into that diversity of intelligence, the whole Ken Robinson, Your Element, so good, so brilliant, and like, Josh Waitzkin, The Art of Learning. Oh my god, yeah. Elaine can't wait to throw Josh Waitzkin, Art of Learning into anything that he does. But truly, that was like the quintessential example of someone that gives a really concise and deconstructed definition of someone who translates one very complex language into another very complex language and explains how you can do this, where his whole philosophy and framework is very general. He's like, this is what he did. This is very much his personality, but you can do this with anything when it comes to translating information from one field to another, right? Um, so that's like really, really cool. And you like to think of a world that's doing that. That if we have the most amazing education in the whole world, and you're learning things, you're learning other things, you also have been galvanized and motivated to your power as an innovator to step up and to start formulating your ideas in a new way that is unique to you, using your unique language that you've built up over a lifetime to speak to people that only you can, in a way only you can, while you're sharing innovations that might not even seem big to most people, but they might make a big difference in someone's life and they might end up being huge, right? If you feel like confident enough to start taking risks and making changes and to be an innovator, you know? If you stop learning and start thinking, right? To get more people on that vibe, will we all continually and consistently learn as much as possible. You know, you want people always to be learning from everything, learning all the time. If you get interested in something, learn about it. You know, learn about it. If you don't know something, if you don't understand something already, learn about it. You know, talk to people. You know, engage with it. Talk to people that know about it, and tell them what you know about it and what you don't know about it. I feel like people doing things like moderation and like not just moderation, but like advisors. Like, there's not enough advisors in this world. I feel like anyone that has an idea for a business or something, you go to an advisor with your idea for a business and you tell them what you know, and they would tell you what you don't know and what you might need to know until you get like a business plan that will work, right? So they'll give you the education you need, but then when you've like got it to a place, you know, go to an advisor. Like, do you have what it takes to launch right now? If you don't, why not? And what do you need? And if you feel like your advisor is not the right one for you, get a different advisor, you know? But don't like walk out there blind with a plan that's going to fail for like starting a restaurant or something. Like, have people that can really advise and give a really good estimate of like, is your plan for a business likely to work at this stage? Right? Or like a job or something, or like what should you be doing? I feel like we should tap into other people's like intelligence that we don't have in ways that we use a lot of robots for. And we can use robots and machines and automated information in all kinds of ways that I feel like we're using humans for. You know, where we could have humans be like there for everything that's really hands-on and heart to heart, you know, everything that could take a unique human imagination for, and to not have any humans working the factories. You know, when you have the greatest supercomputer in the entire world right in your head, right? Come on. Um, yeah. So like working on it and getting it together. I'm sorry, this has been like probably like the longest. Um, yeah, I sat down to talk for a little while now. Anyways, um, but that's nice. We'll see. We're putting it together. I'm feeling just super hopeful this season, and not even just hopeful, but like straight up optimistic, and getting more and more excited about putting these ideas into motion. Whether it's cool ideas for comics, I feel like I've found a way to script comics, action comics specifically, and in the Japanese manga style, which is something that stopped me from reading like any Western like action comics. The way they do movement, the way they do like something that's in movement, and then spatial awareness, like, you know, the space of two things and how fast one thing can move and stuff. It's got to be consistent and accurate pretty much all of the time. And then like it's got to look like it's like at like a freeze frame with like the motion blur and done effectively, so you can see what's moving how quickly, right? Like if you know someone's running over there, but they're also doing like a chop and their hand is motion blur, but you know their whole body is moving, then their hand must be moving so fast, right? This is like one little example of things moving at different speeds and having this sophisticated three-dimensional space where everyone's like within this grid and it all like makes sense and adds up. You have really concise like ideas of everyone's abilities and how they move this three-dimensional space, and you're like tracking it in time. But then to do stuff like Western comics pacing, where oftentimes Japanese comics are like this one like event has to happen and it's like 20 chapters, which would be like 20 weeks even if you're working at the highest possible like speed, and that's like so much. Whereas Western comics can do very broad, bold, dramatic, courageous like storytelling moves very quickly, you know? And I love that. I love that idea of being able to cover more ground. And like, you know, I love manga as well, obviously. And I really love manga action. And when it comes to like people who tell you how to board manga action online and on YouTube, it's like almost no one. But you know me, I love Oba and Obata, Death Note, Bakuman. What he does in Bakuman is just like goes to all of the greats and looks at what they're doing and finds a way to block it down. Well, I also learned how to thumbnail really well by looking at like the top designers, right? So how do they thumbnail things really quickly, right? So looking at how to thumbnail and block in scenes really quickly, and then doing 8-page spreads. We have like 8 small pages there, so you can see a 2-page spread, another 2-page spread, another 2-page spread, and another 2-page spread. And if you draw your comics 8 pages at a time like that, instead of just thinking about one page, you're thinking about what the page is before it and what the page is after it, and what the page is before and after and before and after. And you can look at like the rhythm of action and the way the panels play off of each other. And then in that space, you never do the same thing twice within that 8-page sequence, right? If someone's doing a jump kick and there's like another one down there, you're like, oh no, I'm going to change that up. So referencing your whole thing 8 pages at a time works really, really well. And then I feel like you could take it down to like 4 pages at a time. And if you knew what was going to happen in all of the pages, because I'm usually, you know, figuring it out while I'm sketching, while I'm thumbnailing, you know, and the pencil is moving, you know, you can like then erase and redraw the character half the size in like 20 seconds, you know, even less, you know, even less. It's almost instantaneous. And you want to try and like get it right to like the speed of your thought, right? Like while you're going through and you're looking at what was that panel composition and layout. And the way to do that is to look at how the best people already are doing this in comics and what is their panel composition and layout. How much do they do wide shots? How much do they do really close-up shots, right? How much time do they spend on this one action? How much time do they spend on that? Sometimes, you know, you'll like expand and magnify something that's important to the storyline if there's a lot of buildup behind it. Sometimes you can have a sequence that's very tight and you have a whole bunch of movements that move someone all the way across an area, you know, where they do action parkour movements and they're jumping across these moving cyber cars, right? Like one to the next, and they're chasing someone, and then they go and they do like a parkour like flip move, and they're like shooting at each other in midair or something, and they get hit and they like land and roll, and then you can assess the damage while they're looking at where the other person's going. So it's very active, and you try to have at least like 2 things happening at once, right? It doesn't always have to be 2 things happening at once, but it's a good way if you have someone moving and then like what's the next object and what's the movement between them is a really good thing. Right? And between 2 panels, like if something's moving, what's like the cause and effect, right? Like the momentum and then bam. And at what point you put the snapshot that the panel is like locked into is like important in how you're telling the story, right? Like it could be right after you hit someone. It could be right before you hit someone, you know? So there's like the build up and then the bah, and then there's the reaction to that. Like if someone gets hit, how do they react to it? Like it has to take the momentum and make it make sense. Like if they get hit in the face, then they have to spin that momentum into a counterattack. And it's all like this series of counterattacks and blocks, but you have to like lock them in like and have it all link up with like if someone's going to hit there, how's the person going to block them, and moving that momentum between the figures so that you create something that literally looks like it's moving in still frames. And this was just the most magic thing in the entire world. When I was like a teenager, and I'm already the biggest fan of anime and games and stuff, but I saw them doing it for the first time, in still frames. And the way that they would lock in that movement, and also the progression of plot and storytelling stuff like they do in Death Note, but the stuff in movement that they're doing like D-Gray Man, Naruto, Masashi Kishimoto is maybe the best. And Masashi Kishimoto is a combination of the art styles of Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball, and Katsuhiro Otomo, Akira, right? And he put together the Dragon Ball and Akira style, which is already two of the best people that have already done movement ever, And he puts them together in a unique way with just a profound spatial awareness. And Masashi is still like the way those action scenes pop and the movement between them is such an asset. If you have a cool art style that can do that movement stuff, that will sell your comics guaranteed. And that gives you the complete 100% creative freedom to tell any kind of story that you could possibly want to tell. And I mean, obviously, you need to be like geared into the action storytelling as well, and to have good confrontations and ideas that you could then throw to your arts team. Like I can design you and compose you pretty damn good action scenes already, and could get so much better at it. Even just investing myself in like half a year, which is something where it's like, I know there's so many things that I want to do, but if you could really lock in on that, and you could also get a team that could lock in on that as well, where you have partners and collaborators that are doing the same thing but in different ways and applying their own unique imagination and intelligence to it, right? Guys like Cynics, Ahmed Aldori, everyone on the Cynics and Ahmed Aldori teams, on their Discords and stuff. There's so many artists, people like Night Zhang if she wanted to do it. Where not only are you making the stuff where you make awesome comics and design and worlds and such, tapping into guys like the Brandon Sanderson course. Brandon Sanderson has the coolest course in fantasy and sci-fi design, right? It's so goddamn good. And those people are like, it's very hard to break into the industry of a novel, but it's also very easy if you have an inspired story for a comic to get it crowdfunded and to make a pretty penny back. And if it's a story that people like or you want to keep going with it, you could fund both an artist and a writer to have more food money on the table and to develop their skills at the same time and to trial unique ideas so that we get a larger and broader landscape of ideas that can help fund, or not just fund, but to fuel the next Avatar or something. If you have our independent comics at a higher production quality and producing more unique ideas, it's like those ideas can travel, it cross-pollinates the entire creative landscape. You know what I'm saying? Cross-pollinates the entire creative landscape. And that's something that I love to do because I feel like I have developed tools and techniques better for creating action comics than anyone I have ever seen. And if I developed it further as well, it's like not only the comics that we would make, the comics that I could make, and the teams that might work, but it's training an entire generation of comics writers how to do it, right? So it's like I want to read the comics and the stories that they would take up, and to also invest myself in it, and to be a mangaka for a time, and to really like gear in on action and look at how you do that to make the Japanese comics to make the Western comics industry competitive to the Japanese one. In terms of like the stories that they're telling. And some people will tell you that it already is, but I mean like the independent guys and such. I mean, I just haven't found that much that I like personally because I like these things. I want them to be epic, And I want the action to be really good. And especially if you hooked up gateways between like, comics guys and design guys. If you have one design guy with like the Feng Zhu design skills and then a comics guy, you could get a world that looks like Avatar: The Last Airbender, with like really cool and unique designs for all of their different cultures and peoples that populate this world, all the different factions. They all look unique and they look cool and striking, where it speaks to our modern design language, or they could look kind of like, Halo guys or something, any like popular thing, but you change them so they do not look exactly the same because the designer knows what they are doing more similarly and what they're doing different. So you have all these planned divergences. So even though you're using the framework of pre-existing things, because you're changing them every single time, the work that you get is actually and consistently more unique than if you were to just build it from the ground up and make some military dudes. If you were to use like something as a framework that was an existing design, but then you changed it in all of these very specific ways, then it is referential to that thing from that movie that you already liked, but completely different enough from that thing to where it's like, oh, this story is cool and unique. This world is cool and unique. And if you're doing interesting storytelling things at the same time, it's like, bomb, you know? You can use really good action and design, like Hollywood blockbuster action and design, even generic Hollywood blockbuster action and design could be used to sell a really cool story so that it's something that grips people like instantly. And to have something designed that is also unique and original, where the aliens look really cool, where the time portals and the effects look really, really cool, where the action is like pitch perfect and it makes sense. It's not like, I could always tell because I grew up with these Japanese guys. If someone like pulls it and it looks stiff and awkward, or like someone like moves like way more than they'd be able to move, or it's like, oh, what? He had him trained in his line of sight. I know how good that guy is at shooting. No way that guy would be alive. And it's like, he was having an off day. It's like, nah, you clarified in the story earlier was having an off day. I'm a stickler for that stuff, But even still, I love series like Saga. Saga is like my quintessential example of a Western comic that does a lot of things really well and a lot of things really interestingly. Like the amount of ground that the first 5 chapters of Saga covers is already like as much as some Japanese series, right? Like, no shit. And it's very ballsy, it's very gutsy, it's very like hardcore, and I like that too. You feel like it's a very mature world, like what these actual like street stories from this alien world might be like, and it's a very like mature romance story between them. The grown up edness of Saga is really good. The characterization, how unique a lot of the scenes are, and the dialogue's really good too. I love Saga. I like Saga because it's unique. But I love Saga because it's never something I'd ever seen anyone do before. The combination of Vaughn's storytelling, that's Why the Last Man. I didn't read all of Why the Last Man, but I should. It looked good, but their art style didn't quite grab me. The way Fiona Staples' art style did, and those like these cuts as if from an animation, and just the idea of a fully colored world and those things that you can do with digital coloring. And there's even way more things you can do with digital coloring than you're seeing happening in Saga. If you got some of these like illustratory like design guys just working on color, and you had a number of different artists with different skill sets working collaboratively, where most of these manga series have like 5 different assistants or something, so they have a team that can keep that pace of releasing 1 chapter every single week. If that was Saga's pace, that'd be fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Like when I was reading Saga, it's like, I kept pace with the series and I have to wait for another year or 2 before I can read it. And when I do, it's only going to be for 1 day. And then I'm like back, I like a story that like is happening, it's like happening right now. And if you take a couple of weeks off, you're going to get like a whole bunch of content. So the idea of like storytelling that can move very swiftly and dynamically, like a movie, but at the same time having really, really good spatial awareness and design and expressions and like appealing characters. But I love things that crosses between styles as well. So looking at how and why these manga guys built up this skill sets, how you can change that skill set with different mediums, how you can use modern technology, the stuff that designers and illustrators do on top of that with enough consistency and rhythm that you can like block in a whole story at the same time. Because I've never seen much for designers and illustrators to do comic book stuff, at least not long form, instead of just something that's like small, because they're geared into that skill set. So to be able to learn that skill set as well, to be able to to be able to like also block in like a half year to just work on design and illustration, would be so cool. Just like the things that I want to learn, as well, and to be able to build a platform where I can share the things that I'm learning with the world as I'm going, you know? Other artists and designers and stuff, or then comic book guys, if I'm really blocking into design and how you do it, you know? Everything that Ahmed Al-Dori teach, but with a different language, you know, with a different skill set and basis of intelligence and language that I could bring to it as well, and working collaboratively with Med. You know, where even if we're not working together, I'd be working collaboratively with his information and material because I really respect it. Guys like Cinex, Night Zang, come on. There's so many amazing design heroes, and even those guys are all out there like they need jobs and projects. I have so many ideas for them. I'm like, if you could, you know, galvanize our design team to take it on projects that inspire and motivate them and add their own personality to it, you know, if I could create a framework that other people wanted to jump onto, to leave enough open space to really let their imagination flourish and soar, you know, that's what I want to do. It's part of what I want to do, but there's so many things to do in this world, you know, so many things to learn. You want to be able to release and to get into your intuition and to let go and to think of out of that infinitum in front of you, what is in alignment, you know, with your vision and purpose, and also the coherency of vision and purpose that we share here on earth, right? Like everyone else out there, and the things that are meaningful to you, you know, if you love stories, how are we going to get the best stories, you know, so that you can be a fan of them as well as a creator, you know, and to make awesome stories happen and to advocate and support for that, you know, to lend your problem solving and solution creation abilities to that. You know, if you want to see awesome games, right? How are you going to see awesome games? Like, how are we going to get it together? So you're thinking about not only like the development of cool new games, but collaborative like projects, how you build a very strong team that could then cross-pollinate out to the larger creative landscape, how you could develop creative resources and tutorials, how you can fund, invest in, and advocate for more creative resources and tutorials, you know, that people beyond just your team could produce. Like, if it's working, if you have a technique that's working, share that technique with the world while still, you know, keeping the spaces to make highly specific, unique things. You don't have to make every single thing that you do open source, you know, every time. You can still have like a studio space that will take a couple of years to make something that's going to knock the audience off their feet, you know. But when you do that, you know, you can also, what have you learned that might be of value to the larger creative landscape, to the new minds coming up, to the old teachers that are still out there shaping the new minds right now? What can you say to them? What about independent people that might want to get into the medium because of the work that you just did? What can you say to them? You know, like, you care about these people. You touch their lives in very meaningful ways, and how can you add value into that emotional connection and resonance and create something of value for them? Is something that is of interest, to me, is a passion for me. And yeah, I really want to take that passion into the work that I'm doing, into the connections, the collaborations that we're making now. Sorry. We could do a much shorter video where you say it'd be really fun to make something with Cinex. We definitely have a winning skill set together. I mean, we could take some time to put it together. I need to find a way to find a studio space. Oh man. Yeah, I need to find a way to fund a studio space to just get myself working as effectively as possible. Like, when I'm looking at the dreams and the value of them, I'm like, yeah, sometimes I really have hit the inspiration and got it on like a really good level where I've been very productive for like short periods of time and been able to catalyze some real inspiration and make projects that I truly believe in with my whole heart and soul, and to even make progress and stuff. When I'm looking at everything that I've done with Colorless, everything that we've done with Colorless is super fun, and I'm thinking of like expanding that, and even like, I had the tools, so I was making that, I'm able to make 5 times as much progress at the same time. And I will be in the future. You want to be optimistic and forward looking. Or like the arts and design studio, like totally inspiring place, and the right tools and connections and such. It's like I've learned how to script comics in this time, and I could learn how to script comics like much more effectively and efficiently, especially in building a routine and focus. Everything that Jim Quick talks about in his book, and so many other performance psychologists and people that talk about optimizing your performance and how can you do that, right? Like having a living space that doesn't stress you out, having a living space that inspires you, having a living space that brings your creativity to life, but you're also in a thriving social space where when you go out to the library, there's a good exchange of energy and information. You can walk out to the comic store, you can do whatever you're going to do, and it brings you to life. You see yourself in a city. Yes, there's energy, there's movement, there's life. You go to an art museum, or like you go out to a park, a national park. It doesn't even have to be a national park, just a park. You get yourself some good food, man, like crazy shit like that, man. But I mean, that does make a big difference if you have something like even just like the smallest amount of success, and even imagining like a thriving, beautiful space as well. Like you're on an island and it is amazing, like a paradisal like vision, and also the energy of the city is like amazing. The movement of it, to be like in a beautiful place as well. And many places are like really beautiful, and to have like a nice peaceful space where you can like relax and rest and like release all the tension and to bring it back into your communication. But of course, I want to say also that the asking and the contrast adds value to it. To have to be on that hustle and grind for like a really long time, and then if you can get into a place of like elevated spaciousness, a space of like elevated dreams and motivation and passion and beauty and clarity, and everything that you need is like there. The tools that you need to do the work that's in your heart and mind is like in front of you. You've made contacts, collaborations and such. It's like, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. And I think we'll leave it there for now. It's too long. I gotta like, I get on tangents, but then I'm like, people don't respond to my tangents because they're too long. But like the inspiration's there. Sometimes it's there as clear as day. And I'm like looking into my dreams and visions for the future, and I can see them and I can feel them so strongly and vividly. If I'm talking about like the work being able to change kids' lives, to give them a platform, to give them a dream if they don't have a dream, a hero if they don't have a hero, in terms of like building a story or a game or something, education if they didn't have education, to get a dream in their heart out into the world, stuff that saves lives maybe, and thinking about not just like myself doing this, but starting a movement that could do this on a broad scale, and more than just I could put into it, especially because if you're thinking of like saving these kids' lives and not being able to do it, then the flip side of that's like crushing, like it hurts. And I don't often like cry if things are crushing, or like ever, that's just not something that I do. Didn't cry for 8 years. Yeah, and even still, like more than anything, if something is like galvanizing, inspiring, like beautiful, it's beautiful. If there's like, I'm imagining like kids' lives getting changed, all the kids that don't have to die not dying. If I'm imagining a positive ripple effect that changes the world, that gets me right here. Yeah, all right. I'm gonna work on this, work on these designs, work on these observations, work on getting this together and putting this together, and just keeping a sense of optimism, of positivity, of excitedness, around things, because even if you're thinking of like any old comic book story, if you get into it and you're like, oh, cool character, cool scene, nice progression or development, now you have 1, 2, or 3 issues of a comic, and you're thinking like, art style, that's a cool art style, this is really fun, this could be the beginning of something, you can expand it, like just that like little like turn. And I feel like everyone should be able to like get into that. Everyone should have a story they're kicking around in their head, I think. And even just like storytelling for fun and as a way to engage your imagination. And then if you're just like thinking business stuff that you can do with your friends, or what you're going to do with your education or your job later, if you have a framework for visualizing scenes, scenarios, like that works good for vision boarding and visualizing. So if you can draw and write, you can draw and write and imagine scenes in your life that you want to happen to help superpower everyone's law of attraction and vision boarding. If you're like, even after we get all the animation teams, we're moving these comic book stories up to animations, and the quality of animation is moving up, where we could have 2 or 3 times as many animators, that would be being paid 2 or 3 times as much as we do now, and the world would just be goddamn cooler, right? So that all of these unique niche areas of animation would be expanded, and those niche communities would be expanded, and you'd all have all these things to celebrate. And then the main like pillars and bullet points, like our entire creative landscape could just be multiplied, and all these smaller communities would become larger. The larger communities would still exist, but then you could have these hidden gems that you could explore and find, and be like endless. It'd be just fantastic. But also, you could just use that as something, even if you didn't want to do it professionally, something that you could do as a passion in addition to the other things that you were doing, even if you're a martial arts expert, if you wanted to make comics and stuff, and even if it was just something that you shared with your family and friends, if it was something that was unique, that spoke to the people who were unique in your life, who meant something to you, and to share a message there, then maybe it connects with a larger audience as well, right? But to keep it just as like a passion project thing that you could do, and to engage everyone in the whole world feeling their passion, living their passion, bringing their passion into their life, no matter what it is, and to not let that like, oh, I'll start doing music eventually after we pay off the mortgage. No, don't wait for the mortgage. Like, catch up to it now. Catch up to your dreams now, right? The world will be better for it. In every case, so we're multiplying our potential, we're multiplying our innovation potential, right? We're multiplying our dreams and the love of life. And when that comes in, I don't know, there's nothing we cannot accomplish. There's nothing we cannot accomplish. I'm going to try and put it together. And I'm going to be putting it together, man. No, I didn't even talk about Chrono Cypher very much. Girl and sword, and the idea that your character kind of is like a spirit coming through the sword as your spirit is coming into the game, and the sword's abilities creates a time loop, and also like through the collaboration with you gives her super combat abilities. So the sword, in a sense, makes the wielder of the sword into the main character of the game, and it's the way the narrative and the gameplay like touches into our world, and you touch the world of the game, and then it's a character story where you come into this world as a stranger, and you get to just like experience this breathtakingly beautiful fantasy world with retro game vibes. So there's retro Zelda, retro Chrono Cross, retro Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII, but with the pixelated sprites, where it'd be more sophisticated than the pixelated sprites that we had back then. Like at least 16-bit, we might be able to do 32-bit sprites, which is not something I don't know if you ever even saw it done. But so it's pixelated, but really, really, really good. And the animations and the movements and everything are really, really, really good. And you explore this world. So it touches that like retro game world and energy, that vibe, but in a way that we have not seen before. And then it's like a unique character relationship as you're choosing dialogue options and all these different emotional scenes. It's your connection to her as you learn who she is, what is her connection to this world, what gives her the motivation and drive. It's a cursed world, and she's using the sword, and together you guys are the curse breaker together, right? And what gives her the drive to want to change this world and to break the curse. So you learn that piece by piece as you're gaining your abilities. You're gaining these awesome abilities and using elemental magic, and you're helping people And it's every area has all these like unique character quests where you explore, you know, the emotional connection of all these other people to this world as you help them, as you get windows into their lives and minds. So it's a way to do like this awesome storytelling project where you come up with all of these character stories. Like who are the people that you've hurt in your life, you know, like people that you love, that you've hurt, you know, you want to, you know, change the world, and we all have different ideas about how to do that. You know, we're all surviving, you know, and how we can go from surviving to thriving. But you know, in this world that has been cursed and everyone's trying to get by, but they're also trying to find love, you know, they're trying to like look after the people in their lives that mean something to them, but also the memories of people that they have lost, like items with great sentimental value, you know, siblings, you know, like Totoro stuff. Like someone is falling in love with someone, they have to do something dangerous to like win this girl's heart. You know, all these things, you know, so you have all these radical character stories, you have temples, you have like creatures to fight, and you know, challenges to overcome, throw down the gauntlet of the game at the feet of the player, you know, where it's like, can you do it? So it's a challenge game as well, but we galvanize and motivate the player to the challenge. Or it's like, this girl cannot do it without you, she needs your help. And that's kind of just like a celebration and tribute to the idea of video games, especially when you're a kid and you're not that important when you're a kid, and you have to like wait like 20 years before you start making decisions in your life. You know, you have to wait like, you know, 15 years before anyone's going to take you seriously. um and you don't feel like you get to actually make decisions about anything, and everything you do is like, you know, unimportant. But in video games, it's like the fate of this whole world hangs on your involvement. Like, you are important, you're so important, you know. And to get that sense in kids' hearts, I want the game to, like, you know, you really care about this girl through your shared experiences as you fight together, as you overcome challenges and learn who she is and what she's been through, you know, and what gives her her fight. And then, you know, you put your power together. And the idea is like, you know, we want to try and teach people how to love another. And some games have certainly like done that for me. I think, you know, RPG games, you really care about the characters through the game, and to create that through a unique like character relationship and the dialogue options, really really fun, really fun and swifty, super good. And to take on the side-scrolling RPG thing, you know, so yeah, the side-scrolling RPG hero, and then to bring it into the Dead Cells Terraria game framework, you know, where it's not just like we want to make a money-making like generic framework to make games. We want to make that as good as it can possibly be, because I think that is like equally cool, maybe even cooler than the Chrono Cypher idea, you know. But you know, you want to have something that's very specifically beautiful, you know, whether you use like tropical theme and all of these really weird like fantasy locations that look different than you've ever seen anywhere else, even if it's like similar to a lot of things in the Chrono game series, or different like novels and comics and game series that you've seen before. It does them in a unique way. It takes those ideas and turns them on their head and makes them something that is unique and integral to the vision of this storyline. And what is this world, and where are we going with it? The world is in this huge like state of flux and development, whereas you're uncursing it, like color and magic and life returns to the world in your wake. But there's still always like all of these challenges in front of you, and she's got to fight through them, you know. You know, there's a sequence in the game where someone who's like a kind of bandit who's gonna save his village, you know, a really goofy dude, you know, is all about like steals the sword, and he just like somehow manages to get on jump on her for a second and grabs it, and you have to go on an adventure with him for a minute because you have to like play as the swords. Like grabs it and bounces, you know, maybe he rides a dragon or something. He grabs it, bounces, like takes it on this adventure. Eventually she'll show up and get it back from him and like help him, and you're like, what the fuck, dude? And he'll become like a valuable character in the storyline, in the game, you know. That'd be really fun. Uh, all kinds of things. I like the idea that the world is controlled by an evil queen. So I like to think of it as a feminist storyline. Like, she is very powerful, and unique, and yet it's not just like a man character that's like reskinned as a girl. You know, like she is a girl, and she's got to like be in this world, and her drive and power and motivation are like so strong. You know, as is her love and connection to the world is strong, but veiled in like pain and hurt, and she's got to like work hard before she can open her heart to the world again, you know, and to like reach that kind of enlightened level, and you can help to bring her there, you know, where she can release the anger and the hatred at the bad things that have happened to her and the world, but you know, really increase the flame of the power of her drive to change the world for the better, right? And you can be part of that transformational journey, you know, that shift in your consciousness and awareness. But then the world is also controlled by an evil queen. You know, so women can be very, very powerful and powerful in all kinds of different ways. They are not necessarily always heroic, you know. And you know, I think it's just a really fun idea for a game, and it's not like a romance simulator, but like a friendship simulator, you know, because the player could be either like a girl or a guy, obviously, you know. Um, and that's just like a really fun idea. I have all these ideas for how the gameplay works, like movement, like Ori and the Blind Forest, you know, like Ori and the Blind Forest, but then different unique spells, and there's like elemental magic, like the Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger series. So you use elemental magic, all the enemies have a different element, and you hit their weak element to like stun them, to like, you know, bring up like a posture type gauge where you break that, and then you get like power attacks against them, and it does bonus damage to them, and you gain a different spell from all the enemies that you beat, and you have like a number of them, and you carry around a certain like series of spells with you, and you're building like this big collection of different types of spells that you can equip and bring with you at any point in the game. So you go back and farm certain areas for different spells, you go forwards, you choose what you keep on you, and you're constantly like using the magic that you pick up while you're moving through the game to unlock new areas and abilities and stuff, kind of like the limited durability in Zelda Breath of the Wild, but with a very brisk momentum and pacing, very good dodge roll, very good timed parry. So just the sword play and the dodge mechanic and stuff should feel very, very, very good on its own. But then the game would be really, really hard if you didn't use magic. So magic would become integral to the whole flow and the rhythm of the game, where you could use it just with the sword, but then magic like really speeds things up to keep that kind of momentum of movement. You backtrack through areas to do like timed hunts and quests and things, certain monster hunts, doing side quests. You can go back and like challenge run areas, and then when you move forward, you think of like The Legend of Zelda and like Castlevania in terms of progression. Those retro Castlevania games had really good, like you could do a little bit of farming, backtrack ability, and getting extra items and stuff, and getting a bunch of like potions and items that you need to move forward, but then going to the main like temples and areas, fighting the bosses. There'd be like hidden things within the game. Think of like the Chrono Castlevania game. It's kind of like the most basic way, but then super, super Chrono Castlevania game, right? Like no one's ever done before, man. Like on a very, very high level to come in with that. And that game works as the parallel to Gunhead if you're doing the independent thing. The parallel to Gunhead is really good. I like the way they counterbalance off of each other. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna talk about Gunhead right now. It's 1:42, man. 1 hour 42 minutes. We gotta go. There's 1:42:42. That's it. All right, I gotta call it. But I'll be back. I'm feel the inspiration. I feel the potential, the momentum. I'm sending you my love and light.